Hi guys, my name is Sarah Lugman and I'm the founder of Point One Vision. I'm going to keep this introduction short because I think that this interview really speaks for itself in terms of Patrick's character, the things he's passionate about, and his faith for them. What I want to get to share with you is how this story really started about 11 years ago when I met Patrick for the first time in Uganda. His testimony story then continues to be one of my favorite stories of human redemption, from suffering to now using his strength and his passions to serve other people. Patrick has become one of my dearest friends, and I hope that through this interview you get to also experience his joy and his enthusiasm. Unfortunately, we did get cut off in this interview both a little bit at the beginning and the end just because of some internet connection issues, but the story is there and I hope that you enjoy.
Oh, yeah, 15 years. My goal was sharing the mosquito net as a gift of love to a young child. Which I started with the young kids, with a young child who can't afford it. In memory of my little brother Henry, who died because of malaria. I know, when my dad passed away, we lived in the villages, and mom stayed with us. She couldn't afford buying nets for us, and I remember Henry got malaria and passed away because mom couldn't even find money to buy a net. So growing up and God blessing me with some money, I wanted to go back and help a young child whose parents can't make it, to get a net in memory of my little brother. So that's how Nets for Life started, and until now. Usually I focus a lot on young kids when I'm giving out these nets, and also the elderly people, old people, and also pregnant mothers. But little kids are first, and then pregnant mothers and elderly people. So that's what I do. And I usually partner with the elders of the village, or with friends who have got ministries and have areas where they go and they discover a need. So I'll partner with them and I tell them, I've got this to share with. I've got some mosquito nets. I've got some malaria medicine. Where you go, do you see any need? And then I'll say, oh yeah, we've been here and there's a need for this. Or else I'll just go in the village and I just do what I feel called for, and we'll give out the net and share the love. That's how Nets for Life came in.
And just for perspective for people, about how much in US dollars is one mosquito net?
It depends on the seasons, because they keep changing, but they range between $3 to $4. Sometimes the prices go to $4.50. That is 4.50 cents. But most times they are between $3 to $4.
Yeah. So by most American standards is pocket change. There can be the life at least one person.
Oh yeah. Because a mosquito net can be used for a period of between 4 years to 5 years if someone has cared for it very well. So I mean, it can save a life. So many people are saved from malaria because of a net, and so many of them can't make it. There are so many communities that even can't make $2 in a month. So there's no way they can make, those who can make $5. There's no way that they can spend it to buy a mosquito net. Malaria is very, very serious. I mean, unlike in America, where you have stuff like cancers, things like those. Cancer is here, but it's not so big. Malaria is the other cancer we've got here. It kills like crazy. I mean, when you got it and you don't know, you can't figure out what is really causing problems. You find that kids or older people in the villages are just taking painkillers, thinking they're having a fever or something like that, and it just keeps on building. Before you know, I mean, in the period of about 28, 26 hours, you are down. I mean, within 2 days, 3 days, you're most likely going to die, because within just the first 5 hours, your joints and your bones, the body is hurting, the head, the headaches, everything, all your body is almost shutting down. It goes to the stage where it can shut down your organs. It goes then by the time it does that, it is getting to your brain. It can shut down the brain, and you are gone.
And so really these $2, $3, $4 mosquito nets can mean the separation of life and death for a lot of people.
So many, and so very important.
So I would love to hear about, or have you share about how Nets for Life is funded, both in terms of people who donate, but being able to share your story about the art that you do and how that came about.
Yeah, so you mostly like 80% of the funding comes from my art. What I sell, when I sell my art, I give back a percentage to help the community where I came from, or the communities that relate to those communities that really where I came from. Most of the villages. I grew up in the villages, and I know what it takes for someone to be in the village or to grow up in the village. It is so tough. So I give back, and I'm blessed. I know I'm blessed. I know when I give back, I'm blessed, and that is it. That is it. That's how I do it. And I've seen God bless me. I've seen families come together to also be a part of the blessing, and they have come together to give also, to say, oh yeah. Sometimes I've gone to villages with 1,000, 2,000 nets, 3,000 nets, and part of the 3,000 nets, I might have not raised all of those myself, but probably raised about 1,500, and the rest are raised by friends. When they hear that you are going, then they punch in and say, oh, I want to buy medicine. Oh, I want to buy more nets. And that is a blessing. So we might go with these so many nets, and we can bless almost half of the village where we go.
Can you share more about your art and how that started?
My art is more of recycling. I have a degree in industrial fine arts, and I recycle using metal. With my metal, when I was a young kid, having lost my parents, both my parents, I picked junk on the streets, and that's those junk. I sold it, bolts, nuts. I sold them to the people who buy junk, and I was able to get food, to buy blade, to buy water. So in college, I wanted to use my background as a street kid picking junk to live on, to buy blade, to tell a story that there's beauty above above pieces of junk you see. That's why I use junk. I use scrap to create these sculptures and tell a story of the beautiful part of junk, the beautiful part of what you can become away from the pieces of junk that people can see you like. So I use junk to tell a story that there's beauty above junk.
And now you buy a lot of that scrap metal and that junk from kids who are in your similar situation, right?
Oh yeah. So many kids are still down there in downtown or on the streets. That's there on the streets, and they do the same thing I did over 13 years ago. But I tell them, bring it to my studio. I'll pay it 2 times they give you downtown. So they bring it to me, and I pay them some good money.
So last time I was there, which I think has been like 7 years ago now, which is a bummer, but you were still in, I don't know if you'd even call that studio, but like that little kind of alleyway next to your apartment.
Yeah.
And it was so, and you had what, maybe 2 or 3 feet of space that you were
You could crawl in there and get in.
definitely pretty dangerous for your lungs, but you've created this incredible art. I mean, literally just out of junk and with the resources that you had. And now I'd love to hear like what you're working on now, the new studio that you have, the vision for that you have, and just that growth process from growing up in the slums into what you're doing now.
Yeah, so because God helped me, and I was pretty good with saving and smart with my money. How I saved a lot of it, a lot of what I was making and selling art, and I was able to give back, and as well to develop myself. So I was able to build myself a studio, which is like 7 times bigger than the one I had 8 years ago. So I can be able to work in an open space to do enough welding and be able to protect my lungs from the congested space I had those many years ago. And it has always been my dream that I would want to use a space like that I'm having, or create it a little more bigger to have so many young kids or young people who really have the desire and love for art to come and learn from me. So it's my dream and my desire that one day, or probably in my 40s or before 40s, that probably if I'm retired, I just want to sit down and just teach people art, just teach young people art.
Well, I like love hearing this story because when I've met you now, like what, probably 10, 12 years ago, you had been talking about it. And now you're really doing that and you're really making it happen. And you're always putting other people first in that. And it's just like exciting. As your friend, another human, it's really exciting to see that.
Thank you.
Well, then let's talk about this ministry in Ggaba that you just did with, what was the name of the ministry that you partnered with?
Pomziki was started by my friends, Kathy, Ivan, and Regan. So many of them that I grew up with. All those guys, I grew up with them. We went to the same church.
I met Kizzy when we went to Lake Victoria. Yeah.
On the boat. Yeah, when we went on the boat.
Yeah.
There was Kathy. There was Ivan Woods. I don't know if you remember Ivan Woods.
Ivan.
Yeah, Woods was in the States. I was in the States, and many of them, some of them are still here, and some of them are moving around the country. They're not so stationed in one place, but everything is good. So I remember, we were with Kathy.
Yeah, that was awesome. Yeah. So tell me about the sandbags and the food and the nets that you passed out and what that day was like.
That was incredible. I mean, it has been like 7 months. No, like 8 months when I'm not doing any outreach because of the COVID, and you can't move around. There's lockdowns, this and this, and this was the first one I've done ever since the country, ever since the restrictions of the COVID were coming down. The country was starting to open up, and this was the first. So it was so exciting. So many people were blessed. We blessed people with 50 mosquito nets, sandbags. Those were awesome. But they liked those. They liked the quality was so good. They are so strong and firm. They can store their seeds. So many moms were so excited about storing their seeds in them because the pests can't get to them before they take them to the garden. So they can keep them. They can keep seeds in there and store them for some good time before they take them to a plant.
So were there any stories in particular from that outreach that really stood out to you?
Story specifically, there were so some people, usually people were more lamenting about the COVID and what it has caused to them. So most of the stories were more of what is going on right now and how joyful they were. I mean, someone was so blessed to have a kilogram of beans, a kilogram of rice, just a kilogram. I mean, those are like 2.5 pounds. They were just blessed for that, and they were like, "Oh, this is so awesome." So many people they are taking sleepless nights without food, and this is just a meal that can take a family for like a 2 or 3 days. But it was just more than a blessing. And these old people, usually for this outreach, we reached so much to the old people because those are the ones who are starving so much in this COVID era. They can't work, they can't access stuff at all, and so almost all the food was handed over to elderly people. Here, people work to get food every day. So there's nothing like someone worked for a full month and got the money that they're going to eat for 6 months or 3 months. They have to work every day, and tomorrow they will have no saving at all. So they work today and they eat that. So the father goes back to work tomorrow and then they eat that. Then they don't go back to work and then eat that. So sitting at home for 6 months, so many of them are me. In fact, there are many people who died, but not because of COVID, but because of hunger and starving.
Wow.
Yeah.
I think it's hard to imagine from here because even though we have, the quarantines and lockdown, the economy is being affected, people aren't starving. to death. You know, people.
Oh, many people starve to death here. Young people, mostly people who are very far from the cities. Those starved seriously. Many of them lost lives, but not because they had COVID, but because they lacked food. I mean, a mother with little kids, they have nowhere to go and get food. And if you find them in the house dead, they have nowhere to get help. And they could just starve to death until the president started loosening the restrictions. And then transport came back on board. But before transport, no one was moving around. And it was just crazy.
And it's really heavy and hard to imagine that, but that's a very real thing that takes place in Uganda regularly, unfortunately.
Very crazy, yeah.
What stood out to you most, if there's anything else in addition to what you already shared about the Ggaba outreach? Like, what was your favorite moment?
My favorite moment was always my favorite moment is the smiles and the joy I see when I hand out a piece of bread to a mom who didn't have hope. When I hand out a piece of net to a young child who I know this child is going to be protected. So the smiles and the joy and the love on people's face, it is usually the greatest moments I've ever seen.
So let's take that back now full circle to you sharing about your childhood. Was that something that you ever experienced as a child? And how did that impact you, or what do you remember of it?
Well, yeah, I went through a lot of tough childhood. I mean, it's so much of tough. I know I know I can't save the whole nation, just like you, Sarah. You can't save the whole nation, but bit by bit, piece by piece, pieces. I mean, just putting together pieces, and another generation starts with those. And I know I can't put together all pieces to save the whole generation of the generation that is going through what I went through. But I know by helping a little and doing a little of what I can, another person will also do what they can, and then another person will do what they can, and together we can change the world.
Good.
Yeah.
And maybe just kind of in closing, where does that desire to serve others come from? Like, what drives you to? I think you're probably one of the most giving people that I know on this whole planet. And I think for a lot of people, like, why are you that way?
Because I have a belief that we like personally, like me, I'm what I am because someone stood in. Yeah, because someone stood in for me. And I know there are so many people who would be who would reach to their goals, to their desires, their goals, because someone has stood in. And I'll say probably I can stand in. And if I can stand in for one, that one could stand in for 100. Maybe the 100 would stand in for 1,000. But it started with one person. And I remember 8 years ago when I didn't have money to go to college. And just one mom stood in and helped me to go to college. And today I've been able to help almost, 8 people to go through school. No, 8, 10, 11 people to go through school. But I couldn't do it 10 years ago when that mom took me to school. But I've been able to take 10, 11 people to go through school because someone took me to school, and I was able to get a job and work good and be able to help someone. So those 11 will take maybe 100 to school. So it starts with one. And I know, I mean, that alone drives me. And I know if I help, the one I've helped will help, and the other one will help, and the other one will help, and the generation will change.
That's unfortunately where our conversation got cut off. But I want to thank you guys so much for being a part of this project, and even just for listening to this interview. I think the two things I took away most from this conversation with Patrick were his depiction of taking junk and turning it into something beautiful. I think it's such a powerful analogy to our own testimony stories, in that when we choose to look through the lens of redemption and grace, that our own messy, dirty, and junky stories can be used to honor and glorify God. And finally was Patrick's call to stand in for other people. I want to encourage you to personally assess your gifts, your talents, and your skills within your community and within your relationships, and consider where you can stand in for somebody to love and honor them. Thanks for listening.